Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists podcast, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. I'm Will, and that's Blake. My guy, it's so good to have you back, man.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me today. Will let me know that in my contract, if I miss another recording, that Jeremy gets my lunch. So Here I am.
All the stock gets diverted to him, so I'm glad we were able to, miss that clause in the contract activating. But no, dude, it's so good to have you back. Obviously, we love Jeremy, but he just doesn't provide the same moxie that you do.
True. Yeah, and I apologize for you guys who watch the channel long term. I've just been really sick, honestly. Not COVID, just like this cold that I can't seem to shake. Still sick today, so I might cough a little bit. But apologies to my co-host, and a thank you to my co-host for plunging ahead while I've been sick. So it's been tough. It's tough when if you guys who are watching, if you have kids, it's pretty tough when your kids are sick too. It's all pretty much chaos. So anyway, here I am, and here you guys are watching our channel. So today we're talking a little bit of Critical Role episode 43, I think.
That's right.
Called Axiom Shaken.
There we go.
We got it, brother.
We're on top of it.
Yeah.
And my apologies too to anybody that has watched the past two episodes. I don't know if, Blake, I know you've been sick and busy, so you maybe haven't seen it. It's probably for the best if you haven't.
I did see the disappointment on full display. But
oh, okay. Well, yeah.
No, they were good. You did a great job. So, the show must go on. So I appreciate my co-host for continuing that. But we got a lot to talk about today, not just in Critical Role, but I mean, we're on the eve of January. We feasting in January.
So much in January. We got, obviously Campaign 3 coming back after the little end of the year break.
Right.
We got Legend of Vox Machina Season 2, which, quick plug, I did a trailer breakdown and an episode breakdown. Blake, I hope you didn't watch that second one because it's very, very spoilery.
Well, I can't help myself.
Dang it.
I did watch it just a little bit. I did watch just a little bit of it because I can't help myself. And yeah, you got to check out these videos. Will, you do such a great job with the breakdowns. And even though I didn't really understand, I know you said it was spoiler heavy. I didn't really understand anything.
Well, that's good.
Because you were talking about like the final encounter, and I was like, that's cool, So we have Legend of Vox Machina Season 2.
Yep.
We have AGDQ 2023.
That's right.
So all games done quick. It's the charity week-long speed running event that's going to start on January 8th. So a week from this weekend.
Oh, man, we're close.
Yeah, and I know you don't like to check the schedule, but this year, every year is always great. You always find a lot of cool little nuggets in games that, which just to give like the little very quick spiel, imagine the game that you played when you were a kid or even recently that you spent hours on. They basically play it and beat it in a fraction of the time. And there's a really big community. It's a very big community event too. So it's just fun to watch and be part of. So that'll be happening on January 8th. There was something else I was thinking of, but I'm not sure what it was.
I can't remember if we already said this or not, but Last of Us?
The Last of Us, which we're going to be covering as well. Did you say
on
you
HBO.
have an HBO?
I think we do.
Okay.
We'll get it worked out.
We'll figure out how to watch it.
Yeah.
And then also the new campaign from Dimension 20.
Okay.
That started this last month.
Okay. So the Never After or whatever.
Yeah.
But you're talking about the one that already started though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, and we don't really have too much time to get in on this right now, but I'm glad you brought this up because it reminded me of something. I don't know. You're not like a big Twitter guy or social media guy, I don't think. But
no.
I mean, let's not even get started on Twitter right now. But anyway, I follow Brennan Lee Mulligan and I follow all of like Critical Role and associated friends as well, including people
Andrew
like
Tate,
Brennan.
you know.
Not Andrew Tate.
Just kidding. And by the way, guys, we don't like Andrew Tate. So there you go. Sorry if you watched the show. That was just the joke for
Yeah,
the
I don't
day.
know. There's probably not much of an overlap on those two Venn diagrams
Yeah.
of like Critical Role fans and Andrew Tate
We just
fans.
split some of our base, as small as they are. But anyway.
But anyway, so I don't know if it might not have been yesterday, but it was either yesterday or the day before. Brennan, Erica Ishii, Abria Iyengar, Lou Wilson. Those are the four that I noticed. There might have been even others, but they all posted like really cryptic things on their social medias, being like, check out this new really cool website. And the website is just a countdown timer with like this ethereal, like starry background with like an eye in the middle. And
What's
it's
it
just,
called?
let's see, I can probably just find the tweet really quick. If you just go to Brennan's Twitter, you'll be able to find it for sure. Yeah. The URL was like really long, so I don't remember it, but it's just a countdown with a weird background and like ethereal music playing. And so
ears to the sky,
yeah.
Ears to the sky, new ground all around, heaven split open, and oh, what a sound.com.
Yeah. So check that out.
But then it says, here it comes, but with like an HEAR, here it comes.
So given all the people that are involved with that, to me, that seems like it's some sort of tabletop RPG announcement. It might not be, but just again, given the fact that Brennan, Abria, Erica, and Lou were all involved, that, you know, seems like it could be. So anyway, that may be something coming that we might want to cover in January as well. If it's even a thing, maybe it's nothing, but yeah, for any of us that saw that or has any ideas on what that is, let us know in the comments for sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely have some stuff to cover, even in the next couple of weeks before. So Critical Role's off for 2 weeks. So they're not on this Thursday. They're not on next Thursday.
And I think they are on next Thursday. They're like already coming back. Yeah. I didn't know that either.
That's right. Because they said a 2-week break, but that would be 2 weeks from this last Thursday. So yeah, that would make sense. We had a lot of Critical Role content this month.
Yeah, I thought there would be a longer break during the end of the year here, but it's essentially just the normal last Thursday of the month off is all they did, really.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, should we talk about some Axiom Shaken episode content?
Yeah, let's do it. And if you're new to us, what we like to do is recap every episode of Critical Role so you can kind of have a little bit of a refresher before we dive in deep to our theory crafting. So we cut that out, host that separately on YouTube. So you might find yourself on that recap video right now, which thanks for checking us out. But if you're interested in hearing our full podcast for all that juicy theory crafting, etc., we will link it down below in the description box, the link to the full episode. Yeah, I feel like I've forgot something, but that's normal. It's just been a minute. So yeah, without further ado, I guess we'll dive into this recap, which you down to take the first half?
Yeah, all of a sudden I was like, wait, are you doing it or am I doing it? Tickets or the sandwiches? Yeah. So talking about this episode of Critical Role, there was so much content. It's a 4-hour episode, and yet it's going to be tough to pack it all into this recap. So basically the episode opens up with, I'm just going to go and call it F.C.G's arch nemesis, our little bird friend who had swooped down in the previous episode. And we begin this episode with this scraggly, frilly bird that is basically attacking Sam's character. And it does, in fact, attack it, like splashes some kind of yellowish or green liquid on him. Can't really quite remember. And he takes a little bit of I think he took 1 point of poison damage. So a bit of an irony here is that this is absolutely a nuisance and not necessarily, it seems, a formidable foe. Chaos kind of erupts as everyone's like, let's attack it. Laudna does ice knife on it, which is actually what's going to be what ends up causing it to go unconscious. We know that also Imogen's going to cast, I think, a level 3, maybe even higher, inflict wounds on it. And with her dice, she rolled with a 4D I think a 46 or a 4010. She does no a 3d6 or 3d10. She does 4 points of damage, like pretty much the bare minimum that she could have done. We get Orum's seedling weapon, which he improved on or really necessarily acquired in a couple of previous episodes, where he does the I think called grasping vines. Very cool flavor where he like shoots these vines out to restrain this bird, and unfortunately misses as well. And once Ladna does the ice knife and the bird tumbles and goes unconscious or maybe dies, we don't really know. We know that Chetney jumps on it to sort of keep it held prone. We know F.C.G does spare the dying in typical F.C.G fashion. And I think it was either Orum, no, it was Chetney, I think, who does, I can't think of what the spell is, but detecting if it's fiend, foe, or fiend, undead, or fae.
Yeah.
And we find out it is undead. The bird seemingly comes back from the dead, or at least comes back from unconsciousness, seeming to regenerate. And F.C.G does speak with animals and is kind of like, what's going on, man? What do you want? And this creature doesn't really seem to have any purpose other than to make F.C.G's life miserable. It doesn't really give us much information. And in fact, we're not even sure if it itself really knows why it seems driven to do this, but basically says, I saw you and I just felt like, bothering you as much as possible. After this, the bird breaks free and manages to fly away, not before Ladna casts Hex on it and also sends Pate to chase after it. Pate, who sort of swoopingly flies after it, wanting to make a new friend. But unfortunately, this bird is a bit too fast. So the bird escapes. They're all kind of like, what the heck was that all about? And it's also this moment that they realize that Ashton is missing. He's no longer there. They even joke that maybe Ashton was kidnapped by the bird. In real life, though, Taliesin Jaffe was not feeling well, couldn't be there at the session. And Imogen even does, I think, sending to Ashton, where Ashton basically responds and says, hey, I had to go take care of something. I'll be back soon. So he's unfortunately not in this episode today. Anywho, they're basically asking F.C.G, like, what is going on? And he's like, I don't know. Like, as my whole life, this creature has been after me. And it's a bit hazy. Even the information he's giving, it's not clear if when he says his whole life. I think Orm even asks, like, do you mean like pre-calamity your whole life? Or do you mean just recently? And he's like, I don't know. But all that to say, they're kind of like, well, that was weird. Actually, they do make a joke on, should we track it? Should we follow it? And then I think, oh man, what's it? Travis is like, so this is what we're doing today. Like this is our session today, is we're chasing after this bird. And they're like, okay, let's get back to the main reason why we're in EOS. And if you remember, they are there to find Ebenold Kai and Professor Sumal, I think was their names. And they're at the seminary. So they make their way to the seminary in the Dominion Ring, and they basically go to this front desk clerk named Carol.
I think so. Yeah.
Is that right? And basically asking Carol a bunch of questions like, hey, where's Ebenold Kai? And they're like, oh, well, Ebenold Kai actually has canceled his classes for the semester. No one's seen him in weeks. In fact, there is some frustrated academics and administration type people who are annoyed that his classes are canceled. We don't know where he is. And then they ask about Professor Sumal. They're like, oh, he'll be here tomorrow, or she'll be here tomorrow. I can't remember which it is. He'll be here tomorrow, basically at noon. So they start to ask him more questions, and there's a couple of persuasion checks, maybe even like a deception check. I think Fern even actually says like, "Oh, are you guys looking for a new professor?" And Carol's like, "Well, yes. Do you know anyone?" And Fern's in typical chaotic Fern fashions, like, "Yes, actually, I could be a great professor. I know lots of things." Like, well, we're gonna need a little bit more than that, like some stuff you've published, basic stuff. It's around this time that Orum, with his 29 in perception, feels this unsettling presence, and the room kind of grows silent as this large figure enters the lobby of the seminary. This 7-foot tall, brutish, hulking, scraggly red hair, and an eyeless mask covered in some sort of script or scrawl covered over their face. This figure walks in the room. And Carol basically informs them that this is a judicator, which is one of the basically elite. They're called bodyguards. They're called boogeymen. They're called sort of like I can't even think, like houndsmen, bloodhounds, excuse me, who work for the highest echelons of Vasselheim, and that they are in Eos looking for something. They've been here for a couple of weeks, and everyone basically hates that they're there. They're very unsettling. Don't seem to speak. In fact, Jenny even goes up to this character and is like, "Hey, what's up?" This character says nothing, just looks at him, looks at the entire group, and then leaves. The party sort of surmises that maybe they're here looking for the stolen texts that were taken from Vasselheim. It's around this point that Carol's becoming very suspicious of this group. It's kind of like, I don't really know you guys at all. You're asking a lot of questions, and even asks like, are the adjudicators here for you? They basically ask for Ebenold Kai's address, and she's like, "No, I don't even know you." And not only is like put off by them, but you could tell is sort of thinking like there's something really suspicious about you guys actually because of how forward you're being. And it's in this moment that F.C.G cast Fast Friends on Carol and successfully makes her a best friend for 1 hour. And Carol immediately changes her temperament and is like, of course, how can I say no to you guys? And is like, well, why don't I show you where Ebenold Kai lives? And they're like, okay. And there's a bit of a funny debate on like, what do we do in an hour? Because she's going to know that we were basically charmed her, so to speak.
Right.
And there's some joking around like, should we kill her? Like, should we, how do we get rid of her? And Matt just does this great, like indulging thing of, she has to like take her vitamins and get like her jacket and all this like stuff. It's silly. But, basically they make small talk with Carol, find out about some side hustle stuff that she's doing, just friendly stuff. And then eventually she takes them to Ebenold Kai's place. And it's at this place that they basically decide it's Ebenold Kai's house behind this gate, and it seems sealed from the inside. And
Uh-oh.
scale down through the chimney while everyone else kind of meanders and looks as normal as they can, even pretending that they're gardeners as 2 sentries walk by. Chetney makes his way inside and immediately smells sweat off someone nervous. Looks around, can't find anyone. Finally brings in the rest of the party. They're looking everywhere for this character, even like announcing like, Ebenold Kai, we're looking for you. Basically eventually find, and this place is even trapped from the inside in like a very Esteros kind of way. They eventually find a secret passage down to a basement where 2 characters, Ebenold Kai and then an elvish woman, are reading from a scroll. They even throw a skull out to basically blind Orem and Chetney, and even are successful in frightening Orem. And then they open a portal where they escape, and the party very quickly rushes in to this portal, and while screaming, pulling the screaming Orem over the skull. Goodness gracious, that was a long half of the recap. We take our break, and then basically nothing else happened that episode, right?
Yep, that was it. No, good job.
When the adjudicator thing happened, I was like, yeah, Will said there was a lot in here. I guess that's what he meant. And then this second half is pretty crazy. So anyway, go ahead, man.
So yeah, there's a bunch of lore in this second half. I'm gonna try to get it through it efficiently. And also, really quick, I think something happened with my internet for like 3 seconds, so there might have been like a cutout very briefly there. So apologies. I'll have to go back and check after we're done. But apologies if that happened, y'all. It shouldn't have been long if it did. Anyway, so we pick back up with the party basically slipping into this teleportation magic in like just enough time for them all to get through. And they now find themselves in this dark cavern filled with like this hot sulfurous air, and there's even like a lava stream with molten rock kind of like trickling by them as well. The two people they were chasing, Ebon Kai and this woman, are about 20 feet away, and the woman is actually loading a crossbow. Orum's like, hey, wait, we're here from Ro Istani. We have a
Right.
letter. We're seeking the help of the Grim Verity. And so Ebon Kai is like, okay, wait a second, and takes the letter and actually reads it, and then tells the woman to lower the crossbow. He apologizes and it's like, hey, we were expecting more aggressive visitors, so all our apologies. And Imogen's like, oh, are you talking about the Judicators? Like, what's up with that? And Ebenold's like, yeah, presumably they're looking for us, myself and Baron here. And so everyone kind of introduces themselves. They're like, we're Bell's Hells, and they're actually uh, introduce Fern as their leader.
Yeah.
And then Ebonhold is Ebonhold, and the woman is Dr. Baron Vesticio. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. And
Yeah.
she is a doctor of Exandrian history, specifically the time around the founding and the schism. She says that she and a couple of her colleagues basically found some stuff that put them in the crosshairs of powerful and dangerous people in Vasselheim, i.e., the Judicators are after them. So Orm's like, where are we, by the way? And they're like, oh, we're in, the abode of one of our allies, and points to a third figure that's actually there. This female tiefling in her late 50s, deep ruby red skin, white blue eyes, horns, short black hair. And she's actually like holding a wand in their direction, saying that, like, yeah, the only reason you're not like dead is because you seem to be, potential allies here. So she says this is, one of the places of my research, and introduces herself as Rin, Plane Rider Rin, in fact, and asks like, why are y'all here? And F.C.G says, we were looking for Ebenold because of Spooky Moon stuff and all these things we've been learning. We were basically following the trail of the Loomis twins. And Imogen starts to explain that, like, yeah, this is basically all because of me, like, and explains her dreams and her mother, basically that she's Ruidus born. And then Baron's like, oh, like, I wonder if Imogen is an exultant, and explains how certain
Yeah.
Ruidus borns have these stronger connections and enhanced abilities because of it. And Imogen's like, yeah, did you guys know my mother? And they did, obviously, because of the study. So then Rin, lowers her wand and basically welcomes them properly. So then we get into basically just a bunch of questions, like everybody getting up to speed with each other. And in through this, we learn a lot. We basically find out that not Bell's Hells, the rest of these people, how they got into this. And Baron talks about how there were inconsistencies in the historical records that she was studying for Ruidus. And in the early days of the Grim Verity's research, even the high bearers of Vasselheim would just like push away and shoo away anyone who asked about such things. Um, there's a man named Arnold Trott, who is mentioned. That's one of their like Grim Verity allies, and they say that he was captured and taken in after the ancient texts were stolen. And they have another ally, Janina, which hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, which a little bit more on her later, but she's also mentioned. So after the Grim Verity gets all this heat on them because of the stolen text and everything, they basically scattered, and Rin kind of offered them sanctuary. And she talks about her own history and how she got connected, how she's, this plane rider, studies the planes, and she got really interested in these Ruidus flares and the different bursts of energy that seemed to coincide with them. This led her into diving into Ruidus, which led her into finding the Omen Archive and thus the Grim Verity. Um, so she found these strange abnormalities in the realms closest to Exandria as well, the Shadowfell and the Feywild, and found strange devices in each of those realms being built to seemingly tap into this coming apex. So that's kind of what got her into all of this.
Right.
So then the group starts talking about the stolen texts, and Ebenold and Baron have both read them. And Imogen's like, do they mention a city on the moon? And they do not, but they're very interested in that. So Bell's Hells then fills them in on what they saw through the device and the telescope, how they saw the city and the god energy lattice. They then talk about the Nightmare King, Ira, and his kind of involvement in that device and the Cerberus Assembly. Ren is familiar with the Cerberus Assembly, of course, and she's heard of Ira by reputation, but doesn't know him personally. And then the group's like, okay, so what was in these texts? And the texts basically speak of two deities that have been forgotten by history but existed long ago. We've got Ethodok, the Endless Shadow, and Vordo, the Fate Shaper. Ethodok was the god of darkness and winter, and Vordo was the god of fate and order. The texts also prove that Ruidus didn't always exist, and it was in fact created by the gods. There was this era during the founding where the gods were afraid of something. Something had come from beyond the stars that the gods recognized when it arrived, and they called it Predathos. And Predathos resisted their miracles and hunted them, and is said to have spawned its own twisted life in its wake as it did so. Predathos devoured Ethodok and then Vordo. So then the texts speak of this accord between the primordial titans and the gods to carve a prison from Exandria itself to seal away Predathos in and sent it into the darkness. But the prison clung to our world and hung in the sky as a new moon. So the theory that they have is that in attempting to erase this known history surrounding Ruidus and the moon and Predathos, that would be their best way of like dodging interest in it so that it would maybe never become a danger again. And it has worked for a long time, but clearly that's not working anymore. So they took this information to like the high bearers and the top clerics and priests, but it was like met with extreme prejudice and denial. And now those same people are trying to silence them. So they're like, yeah, so you are now in possession of knowledge that basically paints a large target on your back. So the group's like, okay. And then they get into being like, do you guys know about Odahan? And they're like, yeah, they think that she's probably an exaltant as well. She's been building an army all over Exandria of Ruidusborns, and they've all been coming to Marquette. Especially recently, they've all just been coming in droves, like they're drawn here for some reason. Um, and they assume that's where Imogen's mother probably is, like amongst these Ruidusborns that are being drawn here. And they talk about how her mother was like an incredible subject in their study. But then Odahan found her along with the Cerberus Assembly, and basically her Liliana's personal quest for like finding answers about like what's going on with her trumped her better judgment, and she went with them. Um, Orm's then like, so what are you guys even like? What's the Grim Verity trying to do here? And they're basically Ebenold and Baron are more scholarly, you know, and they're just trying to find out more. But Rin, Plane Rider Rin, is a doer. She wants to do something about all of this. She knows people are trying to utilize this coming apex for no good, basically, and she's going to do whatever she can to stop them from doing that. And Bell's Hells are like, boom, we're with you on that. Yeah, so
let's do weird stuff.
Yeah. So they then talk more about Ruidusborns. Again, there's just a lot here. But Chetney asks if Ethodok and Vordo were prime deities or betrayer gods, and they tell him that, well, this was before that distinction. So, but this was back when all the gods like worked together, at least in some capacity. So then Rin starts talking about these devices that she's seen in both the Feywild and the Shadowfell and the Prime Material Plane, actually, and basically that they maybe should look to kind of sabotage one of these as maybe a first plan of action. And she says that she had been researching the ley lines and came to find out that the cycle of how they shipped over Exandria isn't random, but is just that, a cycle that they go through over long periods of time. And the nexus north of Eos, where this next one is, or one of the nexuses of this next apex rather, is going to be, she was going to study, but came to find that the Cerberus Assembly had essentially taken it over, this excavation site where this nexus is. They basically bullied their way in. And that's where this one of these devices is in fact at right now. So they're like, maybe we could get in and sabotage that. But where this device is being built at this nexus, it actually has ties to this Tishtan culture. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Which was this like old society that basically just vanished off the face of the planet during the time of like the schism. So they're like, okay, so what can we do about all this? We can't face an army of Ruidusborns, but like maybe we can infiltrate like as different small seated groups and distract rather than like face head on. So they're like, yeah, I mean, that's probably our best bet. So let's try to do something about these devices. And Rin again says, like, they aren't just telescopes. They have this like unique planar tether aspect to them. And like, they're definitely important to whatever's going on. So like, if we had someone on the inside, maybe they could help us out. Um, so, and this conversation leads to Fern being like, well, my grandma could probably help us out. You know, she's in the Feywild and she's really strong. And um, Rin has heard of Mori, the Fate Stitcher, and is like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that's somebody that could probably help. But they're concerned about traveling to the Feywild and the weird time dilation stuff that happens there. And Morrigan, Fern's grandmother, as a uh, archfey, could probably help them with uh, that problem. So they're like, okay, well, let's ask. So Imogen gets some more information on Fern really quick before she then tries to send a message to Maury and is basically like, hey, I'm Fern's friend. She misses you. We need some help. Could you help us with the timey-wimey, wobble-wobble aspects of the Feywild? And Maury responds and is like so excited to hear about Fern. Is like, tell her to come visit and I can help always. So the group's then like, okay, well, what else do we need to accomplish like right now in EOS? And they're first and foremost like, oh yeah, Ashton. We gotta meet back up with Ashton. Um, and then they're like, well, what about the Judicators? Like, who sent those anyway? And they're told it was definitely Vasselheim, specifically the High Bearer of the Platinum Sanctuary. They've been chasing them ever since these texts were stolen to make sure the knowledge gained and the people who gained it are basically permanently forgotten. Um, Chetney's like, yeah, we saw the Judicators, and they probably know that we came to your house next, so you might want to be careful. And they're like, okay. Um, they're like, okay, well, how do we get back? And Plane Rider Ren's like, don't worry, I got you. Where do you want to go back to? And they ultimately land on just going back to the basement where they came from. And so she sends them back. They arrive, and basically immediately Chetney hears like the sound of splintering wood and can hear like steps above them from where they are in the basement. And he quickly like closes the false door and is like, "Hey, there's people here." They then hear a voice that says, "You sure you heard them here? Smell them, find them," and that's where the episode ends. Long one.
And that was episode Axiom Shaken. That was our recap. And if you're watching just the recap video, click the link in the comments or in the description for our full breakdown and discussion. And we want to know what you thought of the episode and your thoughts and best guesses as to what is freaking going on. Will, my friend, man, it's been a while since we've sat down. We've had a good stretch of episodes, but this one was. It's just always great when you end like before a break and there's so much to chew on, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, one of my monitors turned off. 100%, dude. And I was so glad that that you were able to come back for this one because this is such a juicy, meaty episode, and I'm so glad we get to dive into it instead of me just rambling at a stuffed animal for this one.
I know.
The timing was great.
Your life is so sad.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah, I sent Will, I don't know if you guys can see the gif of like, what's going on. So great episode, hands down. It threw me back to that episode when we saw Roastani actually, and we got information on being Ruidus born. It was very nostalgic for me of that episode. Just some deep lore drops and some not just awesome lore drops, but really I'm always impressed. Like Matt does such a great job with world building, but then you have an episode where the level of world building inspires you as a DM. We had the Judicators, which I'm curious if we've heard of these characters before. The Judicators, the Platinum Sanctuary, which sounds pretty cool, and then all the crazy stuff happening with Ruidus. I don't even know where to start, man.
Yeah.
But what did you think of the episode?
Yeah, crazy episode for the reasons you just said. Like one of the biggest lore bombs I think the biggest of the campaign, probably the one you mentioned, is probably a close right there with it. But I wouldn't feel bad about giving this one the title. And one of the biggest. There's episodes like this in all the campaigns, but this is definitely one of the biggest across all the campaigns, I feel like. But
This one definitely affects past campaign 3. I mean, it's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
the world of Exandria. So, yeah.
yeah. That's what I was gonna say. Maybe I'm being biased because it was such like deep lore that covers everything, you know. But so yeah, I eat that stuff up. So really enjoyed the episode, and it's also, even though it's deep world lore, it's also very like we're finally getting to some of the truths of the central questions we've had for the whole campaign. You know, like
Yeah.
what is Ruidus? What's going on with this moon? I mean, we basically know now. I mean, obviously there's still stuff to uncover, but it's Moon's haunted. It's Predatos in there, so uh, yeah, I don't know where to start either. There's so much to talk about. To answer your question really quick that you asked, this is the first time we've seen Judicators.
Okay.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong there, but I'm fairly certain this is the first time
I'm
we've ever.
surprised that Vox Machina have never come across them or heard of them. Because they've been to Vasselheim. I mean, they were fairly involved in, some deity stuff. So I'm just surprised it hasn't come up, and maybe it has come up since campaign 1 has ended. Presumably, if Keyleth has had business in Vasselheim, I think it's safe to assume has interacted with or is aware of the Judicators, or maybe even the Platinum Sanctuary.
Yeah, well, she's definitely aware of the Platinum Sanctuary because this goes back to campaign 1 and Legend of Vox Machina. Lady Kima, which if
Yeah,
you've seen campaign 1 or if you've seen Legend of
yeah.
Vox Machina, she is like a champion of the Platinum Sanctuary. A paladin of the
Oh,
Platinum Sanctuary, which is
of the Platinum Dragon.
which is Bahamut, which
Yeah,
that's what they'll call it in campaign 3, I'm sure. In Legend of Vox Machina, they may do away with both of those names. So I'm not sure if it's necessarily true of that canon. Um, but for the campaign canon, yeah, Platinum Sanctuary is Bahamut's order, if you will.
yeah.
Um,
That's pretty cool.
so it'll be interesting to see. Maybe we even see her potentially. I don't think that's really necessary, but possible.
Bro, I'm so jealous of you and like all these potential like nostalgia bombs. Like if Lady Kima shows up, or we had Plains Rider Rin in this episode, which the cast were just like losing their minds. I definitely didn't have Rin on my bingo card for what was going to happen in this episode.
Yeah, me neither. See, that's always fun. But oh, my train of thought just left the station. But yeah, Plane Rider Rin, that was just while we're here, really quick to touch on that. That location that they teleported to, that cave in the elemental plane of fire. And the cast mentioned this, but for those of you that didn't see campaign 2, they actually went to that exact place during campaign 2. So it was I'm sure it was really cool for them to just like be like, wait, are we here again? Um, and Plane Rider Rin was not there in campaign 2 when they went. So it's cool that she was actually there this time and they got to
Yeah. Now, why did they go in
interact with her.
campaign 2?
All right, spoilers. Campaign 2, and this is like end of campaign 2. So I'll wave my hands when I'm done for those of you that want to mute. But long story short, they were basically well, you watched the Mighty Nine reunion. Remember when Caleb went to Eustace Tower and he got some
Mhm.
potions from him?
Yeah.
So they were in Eustace Tower, and Yusa is a powerful mage wizard as well. And they basically were having to run away. They had to escape and in a hurry. And so they were just kind of going through Yusa's stuff, and there was a teleportation scroll. And they're like, this is better than nothing. And so they just read this teleportation scroll, and it teleports them there.
Okay.
And it's because he and Rin were like allies, and that was like a kind of here's your ticket to get here if you need it kind of thing. Um, so they were basically running away, and were just looking for any ticket out, and they happened to be there.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, Plane
Interesting.
Rider Rin wasn't there at the time, so
Okay.
not really that spoilery, but
Yeah. Okay.
okay. If you had something, go ahead, because I'm just trying to
I'm
decide where
about
to
to
go.
popcorn this thing. I mean, if you want to just latch onto something, I'll follow.
All right, well let's move. There's one thing pre all the deep lore I want to talk about. So let's knock that
Okay.
out of the way first. And that is this bird at the start of the episode that attacks
Yeah.
F.C.G.
Yeah.
Um one, and I think I briefly talked on this in one of the past two episodes. I guess it was the one previous with the cliffhanger that the bird showed up in. I was saying that I was surprised that that was even really a thing, which I won't get into the whole spiel of it again because I already gave it. But because we know that FCG is the one that murdered his friends, I originally
Right.
thought that the bird might have been what killed his friends. But when we found out that wasn't the case, I was like, okay, so is this bird thing even true? Like, what's going on with the bird? So
Well,
when the
because the red herring of before we knew the truth about FGG, if you guys remember, the small details was a creature with one eye and a shadowy, almost like flying away kind of thing. Um, so that's we assumed originally that maybe there was some kind of beast or something that was a bird, and
yeah,
then in Bosseros, it felt like more again of a red herring once we knew the truth about FCG.
right. So when it showed up, I was like, oh, so this is actually like there is a bird not tied.
Yeah,
Well, I guess I can't definitively say it's not tied to the massacre of his friends, but at least not it's not the murderer of his friends because that is FCG.
right.
So what is this thing? And yeah, I don't know. It was definitely interesting how you brought up in the recap how FCG doesn't know if this bird has been chasing him for like hundreds of years or just since his new life, if we can call it that, since he
Do
was rebooted
do
or
we
whatever.
think that maybe like in in death he was cursed, like one of his troop cursed him or something, and this is because the bird also doesn't. I didn't get the impression that the bird was being unwilling to be forthcoming. I think it even said, like, I don't know, there's just something about you. Which
Yeah,
I love how the Matt described it as if like someone had been smoking for their whole life and, sort of this gurgle type of voice, but there's just something about you that I want to just ruin. And so it almost seems like this is this creature's purpose.
yeah,
And so I kind of envision like, it's a visual reminder of his crime, his what he did to his friends in brutally murdering them, and this is his eternal punishment, damnation, whatever you want to call it, or at least in the meantime, something that is a reminder of, hey, you can't ignore what you did.
yeah. I mean that lines up for me, and yeah, because I am. It seems like you put it well. The bird was forthcoming. Now I don't know if did they roll inside checks or anything. I don't remember if they
No,
did.
because only FCG could understand it.
Oh, right, right. But yeah, I'm of the team that the bird is being honest and that it's just like driven to do this for some reason. So I think that the curse aspect makes a lot of sense. Um, be it from, one of his party members that he turned on, or if it is a longer term thing, maybe even something similar, but maybe with someone he assassinated in his past life as the
Yeah,
sleeper robot.
right.
Um, but the bird was undead,
Yeah.
which makes me think of like revenants from D&D, which are like the spirits that will like even if you kill them, they're eventually going to come back still. So like that I'd never heard of like a bird revenant, but obviously anything's possible. So it could even be something that happened with that bird specifically that caused it to become like a vengeful spirit for some reason. Like beyond the fact that it was like summoned or commanded to do this by another entity, like maybe just the bird itself is the entity that is seeking vengeance for some reason.
Yeah, and I was trying to see if there's like an actual because Matt, I think any DM does this, but Matt likes to homebrew, like a sort of
Yeah.
take an idea and then homebrew and spin it out into something else. I was trying to see if there was any kind of curse in D&D 5e where something will like harass you, like taunt you, bother you. Um, in perpetuity, and so
Yeah.
I don't see anything. But I'm wondering if he is cursed in some way. Um, and
Yeah.
I'm curious if not only is he cursed, but does he have something that is causing? Because a lot of times there's cursed items in D&D. Does
Right.
he have something that is causing the curse? Like maybe the saw blade from his friend. I mean, I don't know. Because didn't he get the saw blade from one of his troop members that he killed?
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
So
So
I
yeah.
don't know.
But yeah, I was curious, and of course, Matt could have just completely made something new up. But yeah, I similarly
Right.
was like, did he shift something? And Revenant was the only thing that could even come close. Which, for those of you that don't know, it's just somebody that dies that has like a super vengeance against you, whatever, and they claw like they come back as like an undead new entity, and they like seek you out for revenge,
Yeah.
and that can like happen over and over again.
Yeah, look at this. This is such a spot on insight. Undead, um, and it says one of its abilities is vengeful tracker. The revenant knows the distance to and direction of any creature which it seeks its revenge, even if they're on different planes of existence. Which we know. I think maybe I almost said Keyleth. Laudna makes the comment that uh, it knew where you were, like from Bosseros all the way,
yeah.
like it flew all this way. Um, so that lines up to me that it's some kind of revenant of something that it killed. And it says a revenant forms from the soul of a mortal who met a cruel and undeserving fate. It claws its way back into the world to seek revenge against the one who killed it.
See, that lines up in some ways, but of course, anything can be homebrewed or tweaked for the purposes of the narrative, right? But I would feel like in most cases, a revenant would know, like it would know why it wanted to event, like it knows why it hates you, and the bird, according to itself at least, is just like, no, just you
I don't
suck.
know. Maybe it's like a sixth sense thing where it doesn't it
Yeah,
doesn't really know what's going on. Just that it just wants to ruin F.C.G. So
yeah,
great insight. I think we're on the same page. And it's just great knowing that F.C.G's story isn't done, which wasn't dovetailed already, but there were already some open paths there with what's her face, who was like, leave me alone, never speak to me again.
dancer.
But dancer, yeah, right. So who
Yeah,
knows?
and for my money though, there's more to this. Like it's not just a gag of, oh, this thing from
Right.
your backstory is just a bird that hates you. Like I definitely think there's more to uncover there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, every great DM too. I mean, I'm sure you've had this happen yourself, where like a player makes a joke or does like a little bit of a flavor thing for
Mm-hmm.
their character, and the gears start to turn. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah. So okay. Well, so they had that happen. Let's talk about the judicators,
Yeah. Okay.
which these. So the info we got was that it seems like these were warriors, or not necessarily soldiers, but people who volunteer, who sort of sign up for this, and that through a very intense training process, what have you, they are transformed into what we saw. I'm assuming, since Matt described them as basically humanoid, it lets us know that the impression I got, at least, not a giant, not a giant race, which to me implies that through whatever spell or training, it transforms them into this hulking figure, speechless, not that it can't speak, and then somehow in like a very Neo Matrix kind of way, can see the room despite wearing a mask with no eyelids, runes and sigils carved, inked on their body. Um, we're obviously fighting one of these, right? I mean, this is gonna be a battle at some point, right?
I mean, it seems that way. It might be what happens next. because for my money, that's probably who broke in, was one of these judicators and a handler or whatever. Maybe not
Yeah.
though, and maybe I'm getting ahead of ourselves. We could talk about that later. Uh, but yeah, I just pictured these as like awesome, like I don't know if I'm going to use this term correctly, but like dogs of war, like just like military,
Yeah.
or maybe military, maybe not the right word, like religious zealot, I guess, that's been turned into a weapon essentially.
I kept thinking of Pyramid Head from Silent Hill, like just this crazy, imposing, brutish character. And there's multiple ones of them, right? So, um, and it also made me wonder. I kind of just always assumed like the Vasselheim crew were like they're the good guys, and it definitely for me kind of fell into that more gray area, especially since like the Grim Verity. I assumed maybe you did too. The Grim Verity was in hiding because of Otahan and the
Yeah.
her army, the Paragon's Call, and the whether it's the same thing or separate from the Paragon's Call, her army of Rude is born. So they'd gone into hiding because Otahan was killing them off. Maybe it wasn't just Otahan killing them off. Maybe, presumably, these high exarchs of the Platinum Sanctuary are similarly trying to. I don't know. I mean, what's your
No,
take?
yeah, I'm with you. I think it is. It's these. I don't know specifically. I think like the term high bearer was used, and just like these high clerics and priests in Vasselheim. I think they're the ones that they're running from because they've stole this forbidden knowledge that they really don't want to get out, and they'll
Right.
silence it by any means necessary. So yeah, not that it's a lot more complex than black and white, good and evil, right? Like there are people that, and maybe in their mind it's for the greater good, right? Because I mean, maybe I shouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt, but it could be greater good. Like we can't let this information get out because then maybe Predathos comes back with domino effect somehow or something, or who
Yeah.
even knows if they even know what's in it. Like
Yeah.
maybe they don't even know what's in the text, but it's just our texts was stolen. I don't know. I'm getting kind of off base here, but
Let me ask you a question. Do you think Keyleth knows about this kind of stuff? And more importantly, if they called on Keyleth to help, do you think Keyleth would be on their side?
all right. Do I think Keyleth knows about like Predathos?
Predathos, or at least the texts that were stolen.
I think she knows that a text was stolen, but I don't think she has any idea what's in it.
Okay.
So I think
And
that maybe from Vasselheim's. I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to talk about this, but I forgot earlier. Because we know Keyleth has been in Vasselheim.
right.
That like back when she was meeting with Bell's Hells or whatever. I think that's what she said, right? Like, oh, I'm still in Vasselheim or whatever. I imagine this is what she was called in for, at least tangentially. Maybe they were also talking about the Apex and what these different groups around the world were trying to do. But at least I bet she was brought in the loop of like, oh yeah, these texts were stolen. Now, were they bringing her in to help with that specifically or anything? I doubt it, but I bet she's in the loop on that. But yeah, I don't think she has any idea what's in there because I think this
Mhm.
like they don't want anyone to know what's in there.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't think she's complicit in any of that like cover up attempt, if you will.
Sure. Sure. Do you think that if they called on her and she found out what was, I guess where my mind's going is, could we head to a situation, which this could be totally invented, they never hear from Keelan ever again. Like Vox Machina, that moment came and gone in the campaign. They're over and done with, which I don't necessarily think that's true because Matt via Plane Rider Ren basically was like, hey, if you have any powerful friends, now's the time to call them, which to me felt like a let Vox Machina know about this big event happening, which I don't know. Maybe we pause there just for a quick second, by the way. Did you have any kind of similar thoughts, or because I mean,
Not
what powerful friends are you going to call?
I did think that was like it's kind of like a call to arms, like get your allies together to tackle this because this is big. Obviously, that is what she was saying. It's basically what she exactly said. But I didn't take that to mean get Vox Machina. Now, I think because we already know Keyleth has like a million fires she's trying to put out, right? Including stuff with this solstice already. So I think, maybe they'll reach out to her because that is somebody powerful they know, just to like fill her in. But I don't think the intention was that like loop them in and get them to
Yeah.
come help. I think it was more like, and I can't, of course, think of anything right now, but like get your allies that you've curated over this campaign, whether that be, I mean, Esros
Ooh,
has passed away,
all
but
their friends are dead.
yeah, true. Maybe the Gorginae, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Yeah, maybe there's like a Riders of Rohan kind of moment where the Gorginae show up. I don't know. I also like in like a very twisted way envision like Vox Machina coming to like this battle site or whatever, and then the party just seeing Vox Machina get like totally obliterated. I was like, did you just kill our characters? I don't know. I mean, I just thought like, oh, this is serious. So
I mean, I could see running into Keyleth again, or at least via the message spell, just for them wanting to fill her in or something like that. But I really don't see, like, I just don't think Matt. I feel like that takes away the spotlight. If they were like,
it
now
does,
go
yeah.
collect your campaign 1 characters, so you're strong enough to do this.
In this session, you're role playing as which character?
So I
Yeah.
think for the sake of the narrative, it makes sense that she might be interwoven in like to some of this since she's going to be dealing with stuff too, but not in the like we're going to go into this battle side by side.
The only thing I wondered was if we would be heading to a moment where they're like, see, Keyleth, this is what's happening. We need your help. And Keyleth, seeing the big picture or maybe involved in the big picture, says, hey, actually, we need to get these texts back. Like, this is too powerful for people to know about. And then, like, turn on the party, but basically is like, there's like a moment of friction where it's like, oh, geez, this person who was kind of like our ace in the hole is now basically being like, no, like, we need to side with the platinum sanctuary.
Yeah, I mean that would be a cool moment. I don't think Keyleth is just like by default siding with Vasselheim. I think she's concerned about her people, And again, I don't even think she probably knows really what Vasselheim is even trying to hide type of stuff. But it'll be interesting to see because I mean you do bring a good point that's I imagine that Bell's Hells will try to reach out to her, so it'll be interesting to see what that does lead to, if anything, and what she does or does not know, I guess. But I really don't think she knows any of the deep lore from the texts.
Sounds like we agree exactly on what's going to happen. Okay, cool. What else about the Judicators and that whole bit?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see them in action. I imagine they're very strong. So, I mean, for your money, do you think that's who it was at the end of the episode, or do you think that could be some other party?
I think that it could be the 3 groups where I go to. Technically 4. One could be the Unseelie Court. I basically I have here's where I've looped it in. Actually, 2 groups: Otahan's group or Vasselheim's group. So
okay,
starting with Otahan's, it could be the Cerberus Assembly, who they are, sort of like tying up loose ends before this big event in less than 2 weeks. So it's a group, it's a character we haven't seen yet. It could be someone from the Unseelie Court, because we know they've been chasing after Fern. We know that you can't remember. You had vowed to return. Or 3, it's Otahan or Paragon's Call or Ruidus Army-esque group trying to, again, tie up a loose end. I don't really like any of those theories because EOS is relatively hot right now with the presence of the Judicators. If I'm one of those groups, I'm wanting to go somewhere that's not going to raise the attention of Vasselheim or anyone powerful enough to stop what I have in mind. So my guess is the closest link, which is the Judicators, which we've already seen. We know 2 things. We know the Judicator saw the whole troop and that Chetney I think even Laura Bailey kind of gave a joking like, "Wow, thanks, Chetney." And now now we're all together.
Yeah.
So we know the Judicator already saw the whole troop. We know that Carol is aware that Fast Friends was cast on her, and they sort of left that hoping that they had made genuine enough of friendship with her to when when it ends, it being her being like, "Well, we actually are friends, so it's okay."
Well, they
Basically,
have blackmail on her though too.
true, but it's not really. I don't know if it's really that um, uh, tangible a blackmail, even though it is. It could be,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it wasn't like a deliberate blackmail where it's like, hey, if you say anything, then we'll let this, it's kind of an
Right.
implied,
Yeah.
we have this detail, but we know that Carol was suspicious of them, hates the Judicator in their presence, and also is aware this group was looking for Ebenold Kai, and also Professor Sumal, which, I think that's an interesting data point. I'm saying a lot, sorry. That's an interesting data point because Ebenold Kai mentions that Sumal is able to continue her classes because no one has suspected her because she's sort of a fringe member. Well, now here's a group that has now linked the two of them together, which I think's an interesting data point. So all that to say, I think it's Adjudicator. Since they don't speak, maybe you can smell them. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes the most sense. Yeah, especially the smell, like can you smell them or whatever was said, which maybe they can still see. I mean, we don't know, but we do know that they have a mask with no eye holes, so maybe they smell. Like maybe they're like Daredevil, with
Yeah.
heightened other senses. And so, because I think I saw somebody mention that they thought it was werewolves because smell,
Yeah.
which I mean it could be, but to me, I think smell just as easily points to the Judicator since we know
Mm-hmm.
they don't have eyes. They might have eyes, but you know what I'm saying. So yeah, I think that makes more sense. I think it was also mentioned that Chetney didn't recognize the voice that was speaking. So that's obviously, I mean, not that it still couldn't be somebody working for Odahan or, somebody working for the Unseelie Court or whatever. But to me, that points to it being like judicators as well, because they're not
Mm-hmm.
familiar with whoever the judicator's handler may or may not be. So yeah, that's my guess. So we might get to see them in action start of next episode. Which if it is a judicator and there is a combat that they can't get out of, I'm interested to see. Like I obviously don't think Matt's just gonna TPK them, but to me, I feel like a judicator is gonna be, it has to be like a powerful entity, right? And I mean, I guess we're level 8
Eight.
now because they
Yeah.
just leveled
Level 8.
up, and I mean there are like a lot of them, so maybe it just ends up being a difficult encounter, but not like a curb stomp. And also, I wonder if there's like power levels amongst adjudicators. Like, are they all the same, or are there like some that are way strong? I don't
Matt's
know.
gonna do the route of like hair color. Like this one has red hair. This one has gold hair. It's like, oh man, that's a gold one.
Super
Oh man.
Saiyan.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the implications are also really interesting of if it is a Judicator and they fight the Judicator and they kill the Judicator plus whoever is that Judicator's handler, are you now in the, what I'm saying?
Yeah, like because I mean, we could go. I mean, we could dive into this infinitely, really. But like, are they really the bad guys? I mean, it's like a. I mean, if they're out there to murder Ebenold Kai, I mean, obviously they're kind of shady for just trying to hide information. But like, who knows what these people even know? Like, the Judicator might just be a mindless soldier, or I don't know. There's just a lot to unpack. Like, that's a great point though. Like, they're making a very big enemy if they
Yeah.
attack, these the high priestesses and priests of Vasselheim, essentially.
Well, and it's a bit of a biased point of view from like a storytelling perspective because we have assumed the Grim Verity are the good guys, and it ticks a lot of boxes of like it belongs in a museum,
Yeah,
but actually it could be the leaders of the Platinum Sanctuary are like no, like this is for the good of Exandria, like this is to protect everybody,
right.
and this rogue group has stolen these texts, like we assume they're the good guys, but I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It'll be interesting. We may never get their perspective, but what do they know? Like, are they aware of all of this ruinous activity and all these factions out there that are trying to utilize it? And do they even know about the truth of of the moon? Like, were they even allowed to read the forbidden text? You know, I'm sure most
Yeah.
weren't. Like, I'm sure this foot soldier that's out hunting them probably doesn't actually know what's in the text. They've just been told
I
to
yeah.
deal with it, you know?
I'm assuming they know about what's in the text, which is why they're so visceral in protecting that information. I don't think they're aware of. Well, I
Well, when you
mean,
say they, do you mean like the judicator or do you mean the person that made
no,
the orders?
person who made the
Yeah,
order,
yeah,
the
okay. Yeah,
high
I'm with you
exarch,
there. Yeah.
whatever. I don't know if they're aware of Adahan Thule in the sense of I think there's like a general understanding of apogee solstice. Stuff gets crazy. Keela said it herself, like, oh, like everyone's trying to take advantage of it. Like I've all these fires to put out. So I think they're aware of that. But we know that Adahan Thule has been so clever in, the broomstone, which is still not resolved, by the way. The
Yeah.
broomstone, all the things that have been secretly the liquids, not luck potions, what's it called? The Luxem
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah. The
Potions
Dunamantic.
of possibility.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes. All of those things. The Cerberus assembly, which hang on, is seemingly extremely involved in all of this. All that to say, if the Grim Verity is the one who's in the know of all of these people are coming in droves now to Marquette, who are you going to tell if you yourself are on the run? You can't go to the good guys to tell them what you know.
They
So I'm
tried,
curious.
right? But they were met with denial and
Well, they tried to tell them about what was in the text, right?
right,
And they were
right.
like, that's not true. But once you've been sort of excommunicated, I guess it's like, hey, there's a lot of bad guys. Like, who do we? It's kind of like we got to take care of it ourselves, right? Which is,
Right.
I guess, coincidentally how they got involved with Plain Rider Rin, um, which is a whole nother. By the way, there's so much to talk about,
I
man. This
know
is
there's so many
crazy.
moving parts too.
And there's still the Nightmare King, which we haven't talked about, and the actual Ruidus stuff
Yeah,
that we haven't talked about.
and the actual Ethodoc, Vordo, and okay.
Right, right.
So not to try to. What do you want to talk about next?
Let's knock out like the random kind of details first, and then let's wrap up really diving into Ruidus in that whole
Okay.
thing. So
Okay.
the two breadcrumbs I think of is the Nightmare King and then Morrigan.
Okay.
So starting with the Nightmare King, seems like they were a bit surprised to hear about the Nightmare King. Like it doesn't things don't really line up there. And then when they added on that, it seems like the Nightmare King's working for Paragon's Call or the Ruidus side. They were like, okay, that kind of makes
Well,
sense.
he seems to be on
Well,
his own side.
it
He
seems to be
seems
doing
to have his hand
something.
in
Yeah,
every pot, you know?
right. Yeah. What is going on there with? And they even actually, Rin actually even says like, yeah, it might be someone who could be an ally to you.
Yeah.
And there's like, well, really? Why? And he's like, well, chaos. Seems like this person loves chaos. So
Yeah. I mean, I think he's looking out for number one, but that might mean that they align on some things, you know? Uh, so one thing quickly on the Nightmare King, and I believe we talked about this back whatever episode it was when they last saw him with the device, and then he stole the whatever and ran away.
time crowd.
Yeah. So remember before he left, he changed the telescope to look at something, and then he left.
Right.
So I think now, knowing what we know, he was looking at this nexus on the prime material plane, this third one where there's a device
Yeah.
that the Cerberus assembly has taken over. So I feel like he was checking up on them there. Because at the time we were confused because we didn't really know that there was a device separate from the one they were literally using at the time. We didn't know there was one on the prime material plane. We knew about the Feywild one. And so
Right.
I remember being confused, like, did he look through the telescope and see the Feywild? But now to me, I think it makes sense that he was looking at that. Just to check up
Right.
on like how far they were along on the
Yeah.
other device.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it seems like, and they even said this, that these telescopes are powered by incredibly powerful items, is what they surmised. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but
Yeah, I don't, man, I don't know. And so,
Okay.
okay, we know that the Nightmare King built the one in when
In your boss
the
roast.
basement. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and with the Fern's parents or whatever.
Yeah. Sort of the duct tape one. He built his own,
Yeah,
which I would not consider one of the three. It's like this separate one that.
right. They were just doing to figure out what's going on themselves. He helped build the Feywild one, right? Wait, I can't hear you. Is it something on my end?
Oh, sorry. I've been
Oh, there
muted
you
this
go.
whole time. Yeah. No. So yeah, he built that one. It's
The
separate, but
Feywild
we
one?
know. Sorry, he helped build the Feywild one, like you mentioned.
Okay.
And there's something weird going on with the Feywild where Ruidus is imposing on that plane as well.
Yeah. Well, wait, pause on that because I want
Oh
to
my
talk about that
gosh.
too.
Okay.
But so, okay, he helped make the Fern and Birdie one aside. Let's just not even talk
Can we
about
get
that
like
one.
the Pepe Sylvia thing up and like start connecting?
We need it. All right. So there's
Okay.
three, again, excluding the Fern's parents ones. There's three: Shadowfell,
Okay.
Feywild, Prime Material Plane. We know
Right.
he helped build the Feywild one. And
Right.
we know that the Cerberus assembly was there in the Feywild, like with Autohan looking
Right.
at it.
Right.
So the Cerberus assembly is the one that's building one on the prime material plane. So perhaps the Cerberus
Right.
assembly was in the Feywild to inspect this device so that they could then build one of their own, which is why he then checks on it and be like, "Oh, look, they're trying to copy me, do what I did." Because
And
it
we
didn't
know,
seem like he had an involvement with that one.
right. And we know that they also, the Cerberus assembly built the third one in the Shadowfell,
Right.
with their sort of ramshackle little, place. Which it's interesting. It's interesting for however many planes there are. It's like why the Feywild, why the prime material plane, and why the Shadowfell? Like why, and not like the plane of fire? Why not? Like
Well,
what's
yeah. So I think I have an idea at least. It's because I don't know. I think it was Plane Rider Rin that was explaining this, but she explained that the Shadowfell and the Feywild were like the closest realms to the prime realm. Like they hug it.
okay?
So it's
Yeah.
interesting
Okay.
that those are the three. And it's also interesting that you can see Ruidus in the Feywild. I'm assuming you can see it in the Shadowfell. I don't
Right.
know if that's a fair assumption.
I think it is. Yeah.
And this is pure speculation now. But we know that the gods originally balled up Predathos in his little prison and tried to send it away. To me, I don't think they just threw it into space. Like they tried to like banish it, but
Right.
because the verbiage was like, but it clung on, and now
Right.
it hangs in the sky.
Sorry for my dog.
No, you're good. So I think they were trying to literally like banish it to another plane of existence, but
Yeah.
with Predathos' strength or whatever. And I'm getting Pepe Silva. I think he was able to cling on and kind of hold a grasp through three dimensions. He has like a slight tether to the prime material
Yeah.
plane, to the Feywild, and to the Shadowfell.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of the two gods he ate. Ethodoc, the god of shadow,
Oh my gosh.
and
Oh my gosh.
the fate weaver, whatever the name was,
Right.
which was
Yeah.
Vordo. I mean, it seems like Vordo really fits with the Feywild, and it seems like Ethodog really fits with the Shadowfell. So, like, maybe that's
Yeah.
why it's those three realms. And maybe they're trying to, like, break his partial banishment to bring him back to, like, full plane of reality.
Oh my gosh. I
So
love
that's why,
that.
like, the devices need to exist in all three.
Yeah.
That's my crackpot theory.
I love it. Ship it, cut the short, put it on TikTok. We got it, man. That is it. Boom. Yeah, I love that. And which have we had in Critical Role history? Have we ever been to the Shadowfell?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I don't know why I didn't have a follow-up question. I was more just like, oh, okay.
Not
I just
much.
knew if we were going for the first time or not.
No, we have. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm confusing it with like the Nine Hells or something, but I'm pretty sure.
They do go to the Nine Hells at some point. Because that's where Percy makes his
Right.
agreement that leads to the Tiefling child.
Oh, no, they definitely go there.
Okay.
I'm remembering now.
You're like, oh, yeah, this is all messed up.
So, yeah, because even I think Plane Rider Rin mentioned, like, they're more than just telescopes. They're about, like, they have like reality tethering or something, which would make
Yeah.
sense if their goal is to like pull Predathos back into reality, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna text my wife to see if she can figure out why my dog is barking every 8 seconds.
So yeah, I'm interested. So for my money, Nightmare King built the Feywild one, but the other two were people trying to copy him. Now, why was he not involved with the other two? Did he not want to be? Did they want him to do it and he wouldn't? I'm very confused for how he fits into this. What does he want from this? Is he just like chaos is beautiful? I want to see the world burn, or what the
I
heck is
think
his plan?
I think he was hired to help build the first one out of like curiosity, and then they're like, "All right, we got," and he was like, "Wait, what?" So they brought in a younger one or something. I don't know.
I mean, that makes sense too.
Yeah, it does seem like they are heading to the Shadowfell next, though, which I'm very excited of because I've never, indulged much in what the Shadowfell is like.
Bell's Hells, you mean?
Yeah, right.
It feels like they're going to the Feywild next, I would say.
Oh, right. Yes, but yes,
But after
Feywild to
that,
visit Maury with ID. I mean, they could go. It could be whatever Matt lets them do. They
right,
decide to take on the telescope that's controlled by the Unseelie Court, which we have some NPCs there that I can't think of the names, but who have been named but haven't been seen yet.
right.
But then also, it seemed like Rin was pointing them towards, hey, the Shadowfell is the least defended place, which, how far this group has come from being, antics and Dressar to now, jumping planes of existence. But I want to talk about Morrigan, the Fate Stitcher, the Archfey, the protector of a Fane of Power.
Yeah, one of the hearts.
One of the hearts of the Feywild. What have we heard of this object before, or whatever this is?
No, I don't think so. I mean, those are words like Fane and stuff has been thrown out, but I don't think, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think like specifically hearts of the Feywild were ever really mentioned before. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, clearly there are domains of power split amongst the Feywild, and I wonder what, if any, that has to do with the fact that Vordo was devoured. I mean, because it's just a guess on my part that Vordo might be like associated with the Fey. But if they were, and that power vacuum that existed once it got devoured, I mean, I would presume other gods would just take up those domains. But it might be why in the Feywild there are Archfey. Like maybe they each have a piece of that power that was left in the vacuum of Vordo being eaten.
There is an item called the Fane Eater, which was a battle axe used by Arcan the Cruel.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I don't know. Interesting. Yeah, it's this is why I say this episode was crazy for like the implications of Alexandria, because it opens the door for like, what are these Fanes? It's obviously so. It's interesting that this is implicitly an item or something of incredible in the Feywild, but because it's in Morrigan's domain, people haven't ventured in there, haven't traveled in there for fear of Morrigan, I guess.
Yeah.
So even though it's like, it's a really powerful thing, but we still, we don't go there because Morrigan is even more terrifying, I guess. I don't know. It's interesting to me. Which I don't. Is Morrigan as powerful as she is because of this Fane, or in and of herself already terrifying?
Yeah, it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, is she so powerful because of that, or is she so powerful and then I don't know? Yeah, it's a good question.
Here's a question for you. When Imogen was messaging Morrigan, and they're like, "Oh, of course, like my little lovey-dovey Fern, whatever.
Yeah,
come on, I'd love to help." And I think said what we were thinking, or what I was thinking was like, she sounds terrifying. You and I talked about this curiosity around, is she a hag? which hags in D&D are very much, the monkey's paw. It's you make an agreement, make a deal, and not quite realize like what you're bargaining for, what you're giving away. We talked about with Fern being left there, her parents possibly not realizing that they were actually bartering their daughter,
right.
for safety, I guess. I'm curious if we're going to see this play out in a similar way of the party gets more than they bargained for, or not quite what they realized they were bargaining in order to get help from Morgan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so interested to just see more about her because that's one of the things we've been talking about at various points through the campaign is like what's actually going on here. Like,
Right.
does she actually like love Fern? That's one of the things I'm really curious about, or is it all just and not that it can't be a gray area of like, yeah, deal was
Yeah.
made, but she grew to have an affection for her type of thing. But yeah, what what is Morgan? What is this Fane? Like, what is the fact that she's called a Fate Stitcher? I feel like can't be nothing when we just found
Right.
out that Vordo was the god of fate. So I feel like it also slots
Right.
in nicely that maybe
Well, and
these Archfey have powers because of the
yeah.
vacuum.
Well, and presumably can control the time dilation piece.
Yeah, which we knew that has happened before
Oh,
in
okay.
campaign one.
Okay.
So like these Archfey, of which there are many, I don't know if that's fair to say, but there's more than one for certain.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing every person that controls a Fane, a heart of the Feywild, maybe that's what makes them an Archfey.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like not all squares are rectangles, but all rectangles are squares types of thing. So who knows? But
I've never heard that, but I like that.
So yeah, I don't really have anything interesting to add to this. Just that I'm so like I really hope that we do indeed go to the Feywild next because there's so much potential for like
Yeah.
juiciness and some answers regarding all of this.
Well, hopefully some answers. We know that the memory for Fern's parents was seemingly purposely obfuscated. Like it was,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know if that was from the Nightmare King or from Morgan, but something. Remember, they were digging into, I think it was her dad's memory, and his nose started to bleed. And it was like there was a portion that like wasn't like hidden, but was like just gone, like
Right.
just literally gone.
Right.
And so, I'm curious if we're going to get some resolution there. And we also know that the reason I wonder if maybe it seemed like the Nightmare King affected it because he was in the memory, but we also know with Fern, she had from EXU season 1 the false memory that Morgan had implanted of where it came to find out that Morgan had sent her to Exandria, which is interesting. You've been given this person to watch over, and then you purposely relinquish her. I'm just curious if we're going to get more information there as well.
Yeah, I hope so because there's definitely some memory alterings and some weird time things that have happened, and
Yeah.
not this maybe is not tied into what we're currently talking about, but the whole Dark Fern thing from EXU too, like
Right.
it's hard to pinpoint if that was actually like canonical, like something to really dive into, or if it was one of those kind of weird things from EXU where they were kind of not to get into it right now, but that's canon-ish,
Mm-hmm.
So much potential for some interesting insights if we do go there, which it seems like we're going to. But that being said, I mean, they're currently in EOS about to face down Adjudicator, so maybe how are they even going to get to the Feywild?
Yeah. Right.
I'm surprised they didn't just tell Rin. Well, I guess they needed Ashton, but I was surprised they didn't tell Rin just to port them there.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say something else about it, but I guess in the interest of time, this is getting to be a lengthy episode.
Yeah.
Hang with us, guys, because we're about to dive into the real meat of the episode. Bro, what the heck is going on with Predathos and Ethodoc,
the
and
Endless
Vordo, this creature from beyond the stars who the gods feared and even ate, simply being larger, ate the other two gods, and then was banished. What was going through your mind with this information?
I don't know what to make of this, man. Ethodok the Endless Shadow is like the coolest thing I've ever heard of, though. I thought that was awesome.
Oh yeah, and I thought that was going to be the name for now Ruidus. And he's like, and then it was eaten by. And I was like, oh, okay. So as terrifying as this name is, you know,
So yeah, I think the really interesting things there were that, and who knows how deeply I can look at the way specific things were said. I'm not going to hold Matt to that, or because like I mean, also it could just be that's what the text said, but that isn't
yeah,
what actually happened. But the way it was worded was that like the gods knew of Predathos before it showed up. Like to me, it wasn't like this
maybe I
thing
don't know.
showed up, and what is it? To me, let me see if I can find it in my notes really quick.
It
So,
said that it resisted their miracles and created its own like twisted
right, like
creations.
life in its wake, yeah.
Yeah,
So I found the line that I'm talking about at least, which again, maybe it's not fair to dive into it this much, but something from beyond the stars that the gods recognized arrived here. So
yes,
the fact that they recognized it to me means that they knew of it before. I don't know if that's fair or not, but if it is, wonder if they were running from it initially, like wherever the gods, and maybe we're going to get some of this deep, deep, deep lore about like where the gods came from, but maybe they were running from something, maybe even Predathos, when they found Exandria and decided to like start anew here, and then it found them.
yeah,
Or, I don't know. I feel like the fact that because they then seem surprised that it resists their miracles, which if they knew of it before, then they probably would have known that, right? And also, if they had the capability to imprison it and they knew it before, why didn't they imprison it then? But they did have the help of the primordials to do it, so maybe that's why they couldn't do it in the past, but could do it now. I don't know, but for me, I feel like this is something we've talked about. Is if Ruidus, which we now know to be Predathos, is kind of this antithesis to the Luxon, that kind of makes sense to me. Like it's the yin and the yang of the universe. You've got like this life giving force and this one that consumes it, basically.
remember also in Calamity with Xerxes, there was language
Yeah,
around him drawing his power from beyond the stars.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's all I got to say about
Yeah, at the
that.
time, I remember talking about this. I think I even tweeted blanking Luis about
Yeah.
it, and he like I shouldn't even bring this up because I don't remember the wordage, but he was like he didn't even know because I thought I was asking him if like he knew because I think at the time I was thinking it was the Luxon that he was referring to, but now it could be Predathos. But in any
Is
case,
are these implied to be different entities, by the way? The Luxon and Predathos?
I would think so, but maybe I mean who knows? I guess.
Yeah, okay. So this entity arrives, resists miracles, creates twisted, which I wonder if those twisted creations are present in today's Exandria, like if they've encountered it without knowing, or if they were lumped in with, the vacuum cleaner that the gods cooked up and, sent them all off. Which that's a detail, by the way. This city, they don't really seem to know what it is, but they surmise that a piece of Exandria was used to banish it. And they said, well, is that the city? And they said, we don't know. It could have been a continent.
Mm-hmm.
We know of one continent that was destroyed in the calamity. So they said it's way before that.
Right.
So potentially another continent that was, destroyed, or it could have been just, random ramblings, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. By the way, I was curious about the episode title, Axiom Shaken. And I thought, it's kind of a curious, I don't know if you thought about this at all. Um, um,
Yeah, like axiom of beliefs, or isn't that kind of like is that what axiom means? Like it's like a
I don't
set.
know what it means,
Let's see.
but I looked up where has the name Axiom shown up in Critical Role
Mm-hmm.
before, and it's the Sphinx. It's called the Cavern of Axiom,
From
where
campaign one.
from campaign 1. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I didn't watch it, so I don't know. I can't comment on it. But I just
Well,
thought
the
that was a
Sphinxes
detail.
know a lot, which is kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
axiom, real quick, is just a statement or proposition which is regarded as being established, accepted, or self-evidently true. So it kind of makes sense in the regard of we thought this to be true of like the pantheon and the gods, and now there's
Yeah.
just new information that we're finding out.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna really go with the cavern theory.
Hey, I'm not saying they both can't be relevant.
No, it's okay. Okay, so here's where does this go? What's the end game here? What is did you also catch how they said that in recent years, like the Rudisborn used to be a bit rarer, but in recent years it's been happening more and more. These flares been happening more and more. All these people are coming in droves to
Yeah.
Marquette. What this army, like what is happening? What's the end game? What's this apex, this apogee solstice event? Bro, what kind of freaking thing is going to happen in the campaign in the next in sub
Yeah.
2 weeks game time?
Yeah. I mean, for my money, all the so Predathos locked away obviously is powerful, is supremely powerful just on his own before he even ate Ethodok and Vordo, but he did eat them. And Vordo was like the god of fate, right? So I could see that like maybe Predathos didn't even need to eat Vordo to be able to do this, but maybe because he now has fate powers, sort of. Like that's how he's pulling these strings of like all these Rudis-born people, like, you know, influencing their lives, their fates, if you will, to ultimately free him. So I think that like all these Rudis-borns are coming and they're just integral due to their abilities, their power, whatever you want to
So you
call
think
it.
it's like a sorcerer supreme, like seeing every possible future, and like this one, despite it being thousands of years later, this is the one that will ultimately free him.
Yeah, like
Or them, or it.
I needed to influence Elixian's life in this way,
Yeah,
and I needed to influence Odahan here and
yeah,
Imogen here. But I think specifically now, also probably because we have this super big apex, you know, like what is it called? A solstice,
apogee solstice.
apogee solstice. So you know, there's been like normal solstices and stuff, but this is the apogee solstice. So
Yeah,
like that combined with the ley line energy, combined with all these Rudisborns, people's energy, like all those things had to line up for him to be freed. So that's my
right.
best guess, is that he's pulling those strings throughout the thousands of years that have all led to this moment.
Well, and then presumably this party can't take on Predathos.
Yeah, I mean the gods couldn't even take him on, right? So like I don't know what, and it also doesn't feel like we're far, like we're not through the far enough in the campaign for this to be like the big bad final
Right.
situation, right? So to me it seems like they aren't going to, like maybe they will be successful at disrupting this solstice ritual, if you will. And then but then where does the campaign move on from there? So to me it
Yeah.
seems like they almost kind of have to fail, at least in some regard, and Rudis is brought back into like the main
Yeah. I mean,
existence.
I wonder, two things I think is something has to happen to really boost this party's power level if they're going to take on Otahan and what this army, which I know they said we're not going to take on an army, but I mean, Otahan's not going to be like, take me on
Right.
alone. So
Yeah.
could there be some sort of vestige of divergence thing that happens? Like you're going to need, similar to campaign 1 where they needed the vestiges to take on the Chroma Conclave. Or 2, which I think that's accurate. I don't know if that is accurate. Just from what I understand, the
Yeah,
premise of
yeah.
that 2.
Yeah.
And then 2, the only other thought I had was Morgan promising, like, I'll take care of the timey-wimey stuff. I thought it'd be interesting if they come back from the Shadowfell, and if they even go there, but back from the Fae, and it's past, which we talked about this before.
Oh.
What if they come back and it's past, and Morgan's like, yeah, I took care of it. You're safe. And it's past this event, and it's like a post-calamity-esque world, like Link to the Past, like where you go to the future and the world's like ruined. And now it's like we have to get ourselves back to that point to stop it from happening, or I don't know. I just thought that'd be kind of crazy.
That would be crazy, like in a cool way. Yeah, I think that would be awesome if that happened. I obviously, the details of what exactly they're coming back to, I don't know if the world would be ruined, but it would be cool if like the solstice had passed, or at least like, they couldn't stop it or whatever. That would be really
Right.
interesting. I wonder, and this might not be worth diving into, so since it's a complete what if, but I wonder how many people would be like upset that like they didn't even get the like viewers, I mean, like would be raging about like, oh, they didn't even get a chance to.
I do think there is a bit of that where it's like there's been so much buildup. There's been so much buildup to this for it not to be experienced
Yeah,
is painful unless
they ultimately do
they
get
have to
to.
go back to stop it
We
from
have to go
happening.
back.
Yeah. Then because we've talked about like the pacing of the entire campaign. If this goes to 120, 150 episodes, we're around about a third of the way through. The Apogee Solstice is in a sub 2 weeks. If we get there by episode 60, which I think is fair, I don't know. If we get there by episode 60, what happens for the rest of the campaign? And
Mhm.
you said it yourself of like, this has like been the biggest event. Like, where does it go from here? Um, I could see that it's still being a climactic point of the entire campaign if they have to go back to stop it or something. I don't know, like knowing what they know now, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
that would certainly be cool and would potentially explain the Dark Fern time travel weirdness that's apparently going on. But
yeah,
yeah, I think that because we are a third through the campaign and there's got to be more that's coming, right? So for my money, they either uh, I don't know. I feel like even if they are successful in sabotage, whatever that may look like, I don't think they're going to be whatever sabotage they do is not going to like, oh well, that's done. Like it'll still be on the
yeah,
table. So that's
yeah,
my only guess. Or they just aren't successful at all. And Ruidus does come back, whatever
yeah,
that means. But then that's not like the apocalypse in that moment. It's just
right,
now like, oh, that's the
yeah,
first domino to fall over is that's back now. And then over the second 2/3
yeah.
of the campaign, we see what that unfolds into.
Is it possible that we ever see like we know from the details around Alexian that this essence of Ruidus seems to corrupt? And also the details about Otahan was that she was a warrior and then like something changed her. I can't remember the exact phrasing. Is there
Yeah.
an outcome where she becomes healed or something, or becomes part of the group, you know, becomes an ally? I don't know. Like I'm kind of fills the void of Esteros, which it doesn't really make sense it would be her, but I'm just curious. I guess point I'm getting at is the complexity of Ruidus. This may not be as cut and dry as you're going to battle with Adahan, take out Adahan, then you're going to battle with the next one, take them out. There may be some layers here.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think it absolutely has the at least ability to corrupt. I don't know if that is like its certainty though, because I
Right,
think the implication. Oh, Elixion was like a hero, and
right,
maybe he was just being puppeted for some greater purpose by Ruidus. But we do, and not to get into the deep Elixion lore, but we know that he is, slumbering and has been like this
right.
corrupted influence over the past however many years. But I know that I think he's redeemable because I think the gods are like looking for heroes to go
Yeah,
save him, type of
yeah,
thing. So if Odahan is corrupted, then that at least implies the potential for her redemption
yeah.
as well. But I don't really know if I see it going that way.
And it's implied that Liliana is with Adahan,
I
right?
think
Which
so.
we
She's
which we surmised as much that Liliana was possibly working with Adahan. Um, so makes sense, I guess.
yeah.
Um, is there anything else you want to talk about? This is a long
Ugh,
episode, man.
there's so much. Let me just take a quick glance through the notes here. I think we talked about most of the things I wanted to. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to briefly touch on was this Tishtam culture that was mentioned.
Yeah, that's coming up again, right?
That like they mysteriously vanished, which I thought it was weird. And my first guess was like, is that the city on Rhodes?
Right.
Is it
I
those
went the same
people?
way. Yeah.
Which maybe it is. But also I don't know if the timing works out or not. But Maybe it's them. But this Nexus north of EOS at the Cerberus Assembly, and that was their site or whatever, right? The
Right.
Tishtans are the one that built monuments or whatever. So if they're not the city on Ruidus, the other only thought I had was maybe this Tishtan culture, whatever, were like the first Ruidus borns, because they talked about how they have this like magic and these abilities,
Right.
and then they just vanished. Maybe they vanished because Vasselheim and the powers that be were like, nope, like, like for the same reasons they're trying to now, make the Grim Verity forgotten.
Yeah.
Maybe that culture needed to be
Yeah.
forgotten. I don't know.
Well, last thing I'll say is Ren's final warning to the group, which felt like not just Ren, but also from Matt, that there would be a lot of terrible things coming to Exandria, or things happening over the next couple weeks, and telling the group, hey, it's likely some of you aren't going to make it through this.
Sheesh.
I didn't know how to digest that. I just was like, I almost like rioted when Laudna died. So I don't know. I don't know how much of that was Matt and how much of that was Ren. Like NPC flavor versus Matt as DM being like, hey, just know this is a possibility.
I mean, I think it was both. I think that was fully something Rin would say, but I definitely think that was like Matt letting them know that like these next steps, like if you're gonna be doing this, like get prepared type of thing,
Yeah.
So I mean, I obviously don't think that there's like a death barrier that Matt's like, all right, I'm not letting them progress past this part in the narrative until two of them die or anything like that.
Yeah.
But just letting them know what's up, that entering the danger zone.
Yeah, I mean, could we see a TPK with this Apogee Solstice, and then the second half of the campaign's a different?
That'd be crazy,
group?
man.
I don't know, man.
I don't want there to be a TPK in Critical Role, but part of me is so morbidly curious, like how that would be handled, that I want to see. I don't ever think that would be planned unless they were all in on it.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that would be something Matt planned. Like, oh, I'm going to kill them all here.
Right.
I don't think he would do that to them, but that would be really interesting. It could just happen, obviously, but yeah. Getting juicy.
Okay. A lot of crazy stuff this episode. Let us know what you think in the comments below. We want to hear from you. And we're back to find out more next Thursday. So don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at the Pixelists. We're on TikTok. We're on everywhere you can listen to podcasts. And stay tuned. We'll see. Be lots to talk about in the coming weeks.
Yep. Oh, thumbnail.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. This is so long.
There's so much stuff. I don't know. Maybe like I'm just going to be like taking notes, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to do like a trying to take it all in kind of face. Yeah, I'll be like a.
Nice.
All right, guys. We'll catch you later. See
Bye,
ya.
y'all.